Alrighty, party peoples of the interwebs, there you have it. Viva Frei, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler in my home office. I'm getting ready to do a podcast now with Elijah Schaefer at 7 o'clock, as at the time of shooting this vlog on August 23rd. This is a day that people will actually remember. July 13, when Donald Trump, by the breath of God, survived an assassination attempt, everyone will remember where they were. When Kamala Harris gave her day 4 end of the demonic national convention speech, no one will remember where they were unless you were there. And unless you were one of the Taylor Swift fans who got duped into watching it because they were leading people to believe that Taylor Swift or some celebrity was going to make a magical guest appearance, and people got duped into watching that 40 minutes of absolute lies, rubbish, and dishonesty. Today, RFK had announced that he was making a special big political announcement in Arizona at 2 o'clock. Everyone was hypothesizing. The rumors were that he was going to drop out of the race and endorse Donald Trump. What he did was actually so much better, so much more impactful than that. I'll get there in a second. So there were some delays before RFK actually took the stage. It went from 2 o'clock to 2:15 to 2:30, and he finally took the stage at 2:45 to make the big announcement. It starts off slow. It starts off with Robert Kennedy explaining how he has come to make the decision that he has come to make. He goes over the history of the so-called Democrat Party, starting from his time in politics when the Democrat Party, as he so astutely observed, stood for democracy, freedom of speech, anti-big pharma, anti-big government, anti-censorship, and what it has turned into today, a total party of tyrants. Anti-free speech, pro-big government, pro-war, pro-big pharma, pro-censorship. So he's drawing the contrasts between what the Democrat Party was when his uncle was assassinated by the deep state, when his father was assassinated by the deep state, what the Democrat Party was then versus what it has become now, a party of lies, deceit, deception, tyranny, censorship, and war. That's what it's become, period. If you had any doubts about that, you didn't watch the 4 days of the demonic national convention with Kamala Harris ending that 4 days with a speech. It will echo through the ages in terms of the lies that she spewed over and over and over again, promising on day 1 of her administration to solve all of the problems caused from 3.5 years of her administration.
That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed. You live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage and protect Social Security and Medicare. Now compare that to Donald Trump.
RFK Jr. then goes into all of the measures that have been implemented, all of the tactics that have been devised by the so-called Democrat Party to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot, to keep him from debating, i.e. to be anti-democratic. How Kamala Harris basically was bestowed this nomination despite being a wildly unpopular presidential candidate in 2020, a wildly unpopular vice president in 2024, and somehow she just goes and steals the nomination, not getting 1 vote, and they call that democracy. RFK goes into detail about what the party has done to him through lawfare, trying to kick him off the ballot in various states, trying to keep him off the ballot in various states, like what they just did in New York, yeeting him from the ballot. They found a corrupt judge in New York through the Democrat lawfare to keep RFK Jr. off the ballot because he allegedly doesn't reside in New York, even though he pays taxes in New York. So he goes over all of the undemocratic, trying to keep him off the ballot, trying to silence him, steps taken by the Democrat Party, and saying, you know who's frustrating democracy this time around? It's not Donald Trump. He hasn't been trying to sabotage the campaign. Trump and the Republicans haven't been engaging in lawfare to prevent democracy. It was the Democrats doing that. So it's with a heavy heart that he announces that he's not pulling out of the race. He's simply suspending his campaign. But get this, because there's a catch to it. only in the battleground states. He's going to remain on the ballot in red states and in blue states. He doesn't want to be a spoiler, that being a party that has no chance of victory, so he's going to pull from the ballots in the swing states, while remaining on the ballot in the red states and the blue states. Now, at first, I was listening to this and I was saying, oh, why don't you just pull out entirely and throw your full support to Donald Trump? And it was only after I finished reacting to this amazing news that I understood the absolute amazing strategery, to quote George Bush, of this decision. This is the biggest middle finger to the Democrat Party that you can imagine. By pulling out of the swing states, what RFK Jr. has done is effectively turned his entire army of supporters over to Donald Trump. And so while these swing states, battleground states, shall still remain swing states, battleground states, that gives as much of an advantage as possible to Trump in those swing states. By remaining on the ballot in red states, all of his supporters are going to go vote for Trump anyhow, but by remaining on the ballot in the blue states, he does run the unlikely risk of getting one of those states and absorbing whatever electoral college votes would be in whatever blue state he might happen to get, because there will be some Democrats voting for RFK Jr., because there might still be some reasonable Democrats out there who understand what the Democrat Party has become. So RFK stays on the ballot in blue states, runs the risk of stealing some of those electoral college votes from Kamala Harris. What he has done is absolutely amazing. Now, he describes it and the thought process that he employed in order to come to this decision. And he said, look, I approached the Trump campaign. I wanted them to address the issues that I find to be of the utmost importance, that being children's health, that being the environment, that being democracy, free speech, and avoiding World War III. I reached out to the Trump camp, and although they disagree on certain fundamental things, that happens when you're grown adults, although they disagree on certain things, RFK Jr. said, look, we agree on the most important things. We agree on the environment. We agree on children's health. We agree on averting World War III. We agree on agriculture. We agree on the things that RFK Jr. went into politics to change. And he says, look, I no longer think I can make this change on my own. I thought that in a fair election, I could win. This is not a fair election because of what the Democrats are doing. So I see no other opportunity to affect the change that I think God put me on this earth to affect, other than reaching out to Trump and possibly aligning with Trump. Now, in fairness, he says, I did reach out to the Kamala campaign. They didn't even dignify me with a response. Kamala never even picked up the phone. It's amazing how that shut up, I'm speaking attitude translates into getting screwed politically because you are too haughty to pick up the phone to have a discussion with your adversaries or your perceived adversaries, because you don't believe in discussion, you don't believe in free speech, you don't believe in the free exchange of ideas, because you are cowards espousing bad ideas. And as RFK Jr. astutely observed in that speech, if it weren't for the hatred of Trump, my goodness, you might actually have to put forward some policies. But like RFK Jr. said, who needs policies when you're running on a hatred of Trump?
3 great causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily. And these are the principal causes that persuaded me to leave the Democratic Party and run as an independent. And now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, the war in Ukraine, and the war on our children.
It was the most amazing speech I've ever seen in my lifetime. Now, admittedly, I wasn't alive during some of the great speeches of the 60s and the 70s. And I wasn't politically conscious during what might have been some of the better speeches of my lifetime, although I now look back at Obama's speeches, and although he had great delivery, he was vapid in his substance, and he was a hypocrite in his execution. But RFK Jr. said Trump reached out to me. He reached out to me the day of the failed assassination on his life. And I tell you, I said this loud and proud, and I'll say it over and over again. I truly believe that we witnessed an act of divine intervention on July 13, but for the grace of God, but for a gust of wind or the tilt of a head that blew that bullet 1 millimeter, averting cataclysmic disaster, that put into effect the chain of events that we have now seen. This is a unity ticket. You want to talk about unity? You want to talk about joy? It's not that race-baiting POS Al Sharpton sitting up there going, joy, 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 like a demonic possessed demon.
Joy! 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 Joy!
Joy is RFK Jr. putting country over party, saying, I was put on this earth to affect certain change, and this is the way I think I can affect it, by being a part of a Trump administration should they get elected. And my goodness, this is unity. It's true unity between true Democrats, Kennedy Democrats, and the populist movement that is the Trump movement. And I've never felt this good. Don't let it get to your heads, people. Like Bongino says, nothing is in the bag. Get out and take 10 friends to vote with you. I'm Canadian, so I can't vote. But my goodness, I hope my videos reach more than 10 people This is not in the bag. Nothing is in the bag. This has to be beyond the cheat. This has to be too big to cheat. Beat the cheat, I think, is a good hashtag. Hashtag beat the cheat. Get the numbers so that they can't even cheat. Because you know it, and more importantly, they know it. They can only win by cheating. They can only win through censorship. They can only win by ballot harvesting, censoring important stories, controlling the flow of information like they described in 2020. They can only win when they cheat. And the turnout has to be beyond the margins of cheating. Beat the cheat. RFK Jr., if you're watching this, if you happen to watch this, I will drive to the Rumble Studios in Longboat Keys so that we can do an interview in person in their wonderful studio. It was a decision that has led some members of RFK Jr.'s family to take to Twitter to air their personal grievances over politics, to basically disown RFK Jr. and attempt to shame him with the memories of his loved ones, that they would be ashamed of his betrayal. You know who takes to social media to air personal family grievances, especially grievances over politics? Demons. So it's fitting that it's members of the demonic Democrat Party who are now taking to Twitter to disavow their siblings, their relatives, because of a disagreement over politics. That shows more of the character of the person doing the disavowing than of the man who took a stand to do what he believes is right in the best interest of the country, in the best interest of the children. The stats that RFK Jr. cited during his speech about childhood obesity, fatty livers, autism rates, the fact that they are through the roof compared to what they used to be, the fact that pharma has control over everything and is getting rich off making people sick and not curing the people of their illnesses. The fact that in Europe, some of the medications made by European pharma companies are not offered or recommended in Europe, but they are sold hand over fist in America. They treat childhood obesity in America with medication, not exercise. And RFK Jr. is coming out and doing what he thinks is best to affect the change that he knows needs to be made in order to save the children of America. There could be nothing more pure. There could be nothing more sincere. And anybody who watched that speech understands the sincerity of what RFK put out there today. He was brought to tears on a number of occasions. And in the ultimate act of irony, apparently as CTV News, the propaganda news outlets out of Canada, was airing the RFK speech. As RFK was talking about censorship and the media protecting the Biden regime, CTV News had to talk over RFK because he was espousing conspiracy theories. Thank you for proving that you are the propaganda arm of the Liberal Party in Canada, the same way legacy media is the propaganda arm of the demonic Democrat Party of America.
President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party...
I'm going to jump in here. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He was a so-called third-party candidate. I'm jumping in because he's espousing conspiracy theories about why Joe Biden left the race and Kamala Harris, and this is a sort of standard operating procedure for Kennedy. It's one of the reasons why his candidacy really went nowhere.
RFK Jr., you made history today. This is a new direction for the country. I sincerely believe it, but don't get lazy, don't get apathetic, and don't think it's in the bag. Get out there and vote. All right, I got to get in there and stop sweating before I do this podcast. If you like what I do, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, make sure notifications are turned on. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com for the best above average community out there. More important than anything, listen to RFK Jr., eat healthy, exercise, talk to people in real life, get sunlight, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
Vice President Harris has expressed no interest in addressing this issue. 4 more years of Democratic rule will complete the consolidation of corporate and neocon power, and our children will be the ones who suffer most.